Greetings, Nick with Sweetwater here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a quick look at the jolly green giant of the guitar pedal world, the instantly recognizable Ibanez Tube Screamer Overdrive. The title of this video is simply this: Why the Tube Screamer Rules. The Ibanez Tube Screamer Overdrive is quite literally a legend in the incredibly oversaturated world of guitar pedals. Born in the late 70s, the Tube Screamer is the most copied and cloned pedal of all time, and deservedly so. As the saying goes, imitation is indeed the sincerest form of flattery. The first Ibanez Tube Screamer, the TS808, was born in the late 70s. Originally designed to compete with the often overlooked Boss OD1, the Tube Screamer's intended function is exactly as its name implies, namely to create the rich and highly desirable overdriven sound of a cranked tube amp. It did so extremely well, and in the pre-master volume, pre-high-gain tube amp world of the late 70s, this was a truly great thing. Why do I hear you ask? Namely because it enabled guitarists to emulate the sound of a tube amp turned up to a Nigel Tufnell approved 11 without literally blowing the windows out. Then, in 1982, Ibanez came out with the 9 series, and the TS9 Tube Screamer, this beaten up one here, which is mine, or this brand new one from our store, was born. Now, according to people much smarter than me, which is not difficult, the TS9 circuit is pretty much identical to the TS808s. The only difference being in the output section, which gives the TS9 a little bit more gain and treble should you desire it and want to dial more in. Now, there are countless videos, blogs, articles, and discussions on the YouTubes and internets comparing the TS808 and TS9. And to be frank, most of them simply serve to confuse the issue, often contradicting each other thanks to copious use of subjective vernacular such as vintage, smooth, and ragged, to mention but 3. I don't intend to add further to the turbulence of said waters, as to my ears they both sound very similar indeed. Plus, from my experience, they can also vary slightly from pedal to pedal of the same exact flavor too, namely 2 TS9s together might sound slightly different. To be honest with you, as opposed to lying, the best way to compare the two is via a blind test. What you do is this: you get one of each and then have a friend do the switching while you're playing, but make sure you can't see what's going on. Make sure you can't see which pedal is on and which pedal is off. This is the ultimate A/B test. Are you really hearing a difference, or are you merely listening with your eyes? I know I'm incredibly guilty of that crime. To that end, my advice is this: don't watch, listen, my friend. Trust your ears, not these two bad boys. Just so you know, our very good pal and pedal-making maven Brian Wampler did an excellent YouTube video entitled Busting the Myth About TS9 and TS808 Tube Screamer Circuits. And I recommend you watch that very much indeed, because it's excellent and it dispels the myth just like the title says. Anyway, as I've owned a TS9 since about 1983, that's the particular green box I'm going to focus on. Now, as I'm probably sure you're aware, the TS9's user list is very impressive and also very long, going from Stevie Ray Vaughan in The Edge, to Noel Gallagher and Jerry Cantrell, to Kirk Hammett, Gary Holt, Matt Heafy, and my pal All England, to name a mere 8. Yes, my friend, this list literally goes from blues to pop to rock to metal, and all points in between. And the reason everyone loves this bad boy is not just because of what it adds to your sound, also because of what it takes away. More about that in a minute. Anyway, as you've just heard, I'm anything but a Texas blues player by any stretch of the imagination, so therefore I'm going to focus on how the TS9 is used in rock and metal. To that end, we're going to start off with a Marshall Studio Classic 20-watt tube head, as it's based on the amp that dominated 80s rock and metal, the Marshall JCM 800-2203. And the cabinet I'm using, incidentally, is a Marshall 140-watt SC212 vertical 2x12, loaded with fine old Celestion G12 V-type ceramic magnet speakers. A fine pairing indeed. The TS9 boasts three simple, self-explanatory controls, namely drive, tone, and level. Drive, wait for it, controls the amount of overdrive, level is the pedal's volume, and the tone control allows you to make the pedal sound brighter or darker to further enhance the sound you're looking for. Incidentally, compared to many modern overdrive and distortion delivering devices, the amount of gain a Tube Screamer dishes out is definitely on the subtle side. But it's also the right stuff, especially when used to turbocharge an already dirty tube amp. Before I go any further, I'd quickly like to point out that a lot of guys I know like to use the TS9 with a totally clean sounding amp to give them a mild crunch. I personally don't like to do this though, due to the fact that the Tube Screamer's output is a blend of driven and undriven signals. And I just don't like to hear a clean sound mixed with an overdriven one. It sounds, well, artificial to me. But that's just me, folks. That's just my taste, or distinct lack thereof. That said, that very well-respected tone chaser and excellent player Pete Thorne also happens to feel the same way, as does Lee Anderton, so I feel I'm in pretty good company here. Incidentally, a lot of reviews don't even mention the Tube Screamer's clean/dirty output mix, and I feel that's somewhat wrong. Misleading, if you will. Granted, it's subtle, but it's there. Here's the amp clean. And here's that sound with all the controls on the pedal set at 12 o'clock. Hear what I mean? Like I just said, it's really subtle and a lot of people dig it. I just don't, that's all. Anyway, to my ears and fingers, the pedal starts to really come into its own when it's driving an amp that's sitting right on that very edge of breakup, because then the clean part of the TS9's output gets broken up by the amp, adding a nice touch of clarity to the overall sound. Here's what I mean. Here's the amp by itself. Yep, to my ears, that's definitely starting to break up nicely. So, let's kick in the Tube Screamer and see what happens. Yeah, I like that. Can you hear what it's doing? It's not only adding desirable overdrive, it's also giving your guitar sound a nice mid-range bump, which helps it sit better in the mix. And that makes sense, doesn't it? After all, the guitar is effectively a mid-range instrument, so, as our pal Yngwie Malmsteen likes to say, less isn't more, more is more. The other thing the Tube Screamer does really well is tighten up the low end of your sound, and it does so by rolling off some bass, which might at first seem to be a little bit counterintuitive, but once again it makes sense. I mean, if your amp sounds a little woofy or flubby, then removing some lows from your guitar signal will help get rid of that low-end looseness. Some classic Fender combos can definitely get a little flubby/flabby in the low end when driven hard, and a Tube Screamer is the perfect cure for that. Want proof? Just listen to the late, great Stevie Ray Vaughan. I rest my case. Now, a lot of players, including yours truly, like to do this with the TS9, namely back off the drive control and crank the level control. Doing this front-ends the amp nicely. And while it does clean up the TS9's output signal, the pedal's highly desirable mid-boost and low-end tightening properties are still firing on all 6 cylinders. Plus, it can also brighten up your tone too with some deft twisting of the control of that name as well. two traits, namely that nice mid-hump in the middle plus tightening the lows, have made the TS9 an incredibly popular pedal in the high-gain world of both heavy metal and hard rock. To this end, a lot of heavy riffing chuggers love running a tube screamer in front of a high-gain amp, like the Mini PV6505 tube head, to great effect. And invariably when they use the TS9 in this fashion, the drive control is backed way off while the level control is cranked, with the tone knob of course set to taste. Here's the Mini 6505 in high-gain mode without the TS9. And now here is the same exact riff, well, as close as I can get it, with the TS9 kicked in to tighten up that low end and give me a little bit more bump in those all-important mids. When doing this, I personally like to do the following. I'll set the amp up to the gain setting I like, but then I'll back it off a bit before I kick in the TS9. And invariably, I'll leave the pedal on throughout the set, with a noise gate right after it as well, just to help quieten up the resulting high gain hiss. Like you just heard. The gate I'm using, by the way, is my trusty ISP decimator. Hopefully by now you can definitely hear why the TS9 or one of its countless clones is such a popular front-ending device in all forms of metal, from 80s through thrash through djent. It not only helps you cut through the mix, it can also brighten up your tone too, and as mentioned on numerous occasions already, it tightens up those all-important lows. Oh yeah, and for what it's worth, a TS9 works really well on bass also. Plus, it's a great pedal to stack with other distortion or overdrive pedals. Once again, sometimes more is indeed more. If you've never experimented with one, I recommend it highly, regardless of your playing style and taste. As long as some overdriven tones are involved in your playing, what the Tube Screamer both adds and takes away could prove invaluable. As our dear pal Josh Scott, the world-renowned professor of guitar pedals, recently said about the TS9, if NASA cared to show aliens exactly what guitar pedals are, they would have sent this one up in the Voyager next to the recording of Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good. This is the pedal of all pedals. It works literally in every single genre. Well said, Mr. Scott, well said. For more information on these jolly green giants of the overdrive world, please go to sweetwater.com, or better still, call your sales engineer. That said, I'm out. See ya. Thank you so very much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click here for more videos just like this, or visit sweetwater.com for all your pro audio and music instrument needs. Like I said, thank you so very much for watching. Goodbye.